For the last many, many months, I feel like we've greeted each other with the question, "How are you?" And then clarified, "Well, the world's falling apart, but how are you?" In the midst of a world that feels like it's crumbling around us, how do we answer that question? How do we hold multiple truths at the same time? We are all struggling to figure out how to celebrate in the midst of sadness, to laugh in the midst of war, to feel joy in the midst of darkness. The Torah portion we will read on Yom Kippur teaches us that holding two truths simultaneously is not new. Natati lefanecha habracha v'haklala, I have set before you blessing and curse, life and death. Today's reality is the same one our ancestors dealt with. Life seems to happen in the midst of a complicated and messy world. The Torah continues, Becharta b'chaim, in the midst of it all, choose life, embrace it, live it, and find a good therapist. How do we navigate these difficult times? Each day we open the newspaper and find ourselves confronted by war, drought, suffering, the demise of democracy, poverty, injustice. But Judaism insists that we lean into life. We cannot be overcome by despair. Joy and darkness both exist. Blessing and curse are all around us. Kohelet, or Ecclesiastes, the book we read each year on Sukkot, gives us these words. A time is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven. A time for being born and a time for dying. A time for planting and a time for uprooting the planted. A time for slaying and a time for healing. A time for tearing down and a time for building up. A time for weeping and a time for laughing. Yehuda Amichai was the great Israeli poet of the 20th century. He often used ancient Jewish texts in his modern poetry. In one beautiful poem, he responds to Kohelet. Yehuda Amichai refutes the idea that there are separate times for each experience in life. This is from his poem called "A Man Doesn't Have Time in His Life." A man doesn't have time in his life to have time for everything. He doesn't have seasons enough to have a season for every purpose. Ecclesiastes was wrong about that. A man needs to love and to hate at the same moment, to laugh and cry with the same eyes, with the same hands to throw stones and to gather them, and to hate and forgive and remember and forget. A man doesn't have time. When he loses, he seeks. When he finds, he forgets. When he forgets, he loves. When he loves, he begins to forget. What does it mean to be alive in the midst of blessing and curse, of life and death? It's exhausting. It's what we're doing right now. Just a few days after the horrible October 7th attacks, I got a call from our congregant, Dana Bloom, whose son, Micah, was scheduled to become bar mitzvah that Shabbat. Do we just cancel everything? She asked. What do we do? We talked for a moment and then agreed there could not be a more important time for a simcha, a community celebration of shared joy. I could barely hold back my tears the next Friday night as we welcomed Micah and his family to light candles for Shabbat. In the midst of terrible darkness, our community celebrated with all our might. Joy is the Jewish antidote to darkness, pain, and sorrow. The October 7 attacks were designed to break the will of all Israel. But do you know what followed? In the midst of devastation and anguish, Israel experienced a baby boom. The response to horror was to allow joy to come in, to believe in new life, new possibilities. Natati lefanecha habracha v'haklala, I have set before you blessing and curse. Choose life. Over the summer, I went to Washington, D.C. with my family. We drove by many of our nation's most iconic and inspiring structures, and I wondered what wisdom the great leaders of our country might be able to share with us today. As we passed by the Lincoln Memorial, I thought about many of the challenging times in our nation's history. When we came to the tidal basin, I decided it was time to get a closer look at the words of a great visionary. I had been past it, near it, taken pictures in front of it, but I had never followed the path into the Jefferson Memorial before. The white marble is so impressive. The columns create a small sanctuary from the outside world. It was starting to rain. We were glad to be under the cover of the monument's dome, a respite from the weather and the city outside. We sat down on beautiful benches to admire the setting and look up at the quotes on the walls. I turned and started reading. On the wall in the southwest portico, these words are chiseled into the marble. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You probably recognize these words from Jefferson's most famous document, the Declaration of Independence. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, rights, at least in theory, granted to each of us. I sat on the white marble bench looking out through the columns at the rain, mulling over these very famous words. I wondered what our ancient rabbis might say if they heard them. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life and liberty, I thought, two good Jewish concepts. The rabbis would approve of those, but what would they say about the pursuit of happiness? In the Torah, the word pursuit is used with regard to justice. The ongoing pursuit of justice is central to Judaism. But is it Jewish to pursue happiness? I wondered. I decided to look into this further. When I got home, I started to research this question, and I came across an article written by Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, Zichrono Livracha. Rabbi Lord Sacks was an Orthodox rabbi who lived in London. He served as the chief rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregations of the Commonwealth and was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. He died in 2020 and was considered to be one of the great Torah scholars of our time. He wrote widely on many topics and masterfully used the ancient words of Torah to help Jews think about the contemporary world and its complexities. I found an article that included his thoughts on Thomas Jefferson's words, the pursuit of happiness. So I started to read, hoping to understand these words in a Jewish context. In the article, Rabbi Sacks asks about the Jewish relevance of happiness. He does this by comparing happiness and joy. According to his interpretation, there are three important differences between happiness and joy. First, happiness is the state of mind of an individual, whereas joy is something we share. Second, happiness is something you have to pursue, likely never arriving at it. Joy finds you. Third, happiness is an attitude to life as a whole, while joy lives in the moment. Let's take a minute to think about this. First, is happiness the state of mind of an individual, whereas joy is something we share? Happiness, or the pursuit thereof, is a lonely activity, Rabbi Sacks explains. Joy is the redemption of solitude. To share joy is to live life with others. Second, Rabbi Sacks argues that happiness is something you have to pursue, likely never arriving at it. Joy finds you. It surprises you. If happiness is something we pursue, we chase after it with the recognition that we'll likely never reach it. We ourselves might keep moving the target farther and farther away needing more and more to be happy. Or we may feel defeated, recognizing that the state of being happy all the time isn't possible. Joy pops up occasionally, delighting us and making us grateful for its unexpected appearance. The third difference Rabbi Sachs explores is that happiness is an attitude to life as a whole, while joy lives in the moment. We somehow think that if we achieve happiness, our problems will be solved. Happiness would stay with us always. How frustrating and disappointing to discover that life is filled with blessing and curse. And pure happiness, though perhaps a philosophical concept, isn't really real. No one is happy all the time. But joy can arrive even in the proximity of despair. It can pierce the darkness for a short time, like a firefly. Let's go back to Kohelet, or Ecclesiastes, for a minute. Many of you know that Kohelet is my favorite Jewish text. I hope you'll come to study it with me this year during Sukkot. It's the short book that we read every year in the middle of Sukkot, the third of the 4 big fall holidays, which start tonight. We begin this season with Rosh Hashanah, a celebration of a new year, and also a time to reflect on the year which is ending. 10 days from now, we'll gather again for Yom Kippur, a day which simulates death. No eating, drinking, sandals, makeup. We wear white and look into the empty ark, representing our own coffins. Have we done the work necessary to truly begin anew, to clean the slate? Then, 5 days later, as Sukkot begins, we spend a week in the beauty and discomfort of our sukkahs, of temporary structures which let the wind and rain and light in. They remind us of the fragility of life and instill a sense of awe at our own vulnerability. Kohelet, the book we read during this holiday, is my favorite, probably because it's so melodramatic. The writer insists that life is fragile and fleeting and asks in many different ways, what's the point anyway? I love this book because it's real and exposes the doubts we all have at times. What's the point of it all? After the formality of the prayers of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I appreciate the very human quality of this book. It's like reading a memoir or a diary. It could be my diary entry on any challenging day. I was delighted to discover that in Rabbi Sachs' article on happiness versus joy, he also commented on Kohelet. His understanding of Kohelet fits well with mine. It could be the diary entry of any one of us on a day when we step in a puddle or spill coffee on ourselves, or just notice blessing and curse in the universe. Kohelet asked the very human question, what's the point of it all anyway? This text is seen by some as a downer. Kohelet is notoriously the man who had everything, yet describes it all as hevel, a word he uses almost 40 times in the space of the book, and is variously translated as meaningless, pointless, futile, empty, or as the King James Bible famously translates the word, vanity. Those of you who have studied this text in our Torah study class are familiar with our very own Dan Weiss's translation of this word as vapor. Each of these different English words gives a similar sense, something fleeting, short, temporal. But Kohelet doesn't actually stop there. It's true that he asks in many different ways what the purpose is of all of our efforts. But the book also uses the word simcha, joy, 17 times. Rabbi Sachs boldly teaches that it is actually the Jewish text most focused on joy. Kohelet searches far and wide for an understanding of the complexities of life, the paradoxes, and the seeming incompatibilities. Like all those who came before him and long after him, we are surrounded with blessing and curse. And Judaism instructs us, Becharta b'chaim, Make choices in your life so that joy can come in. Rabbi Sachs explains that Kohelet eventually finds meaning in joy because joy lives not in thoughts of tomorrow, but in the grateful acceptance and celebration of today. We are here. We are alive. Even if we can't answer the question, what is the point of it all, we can experience moments of joy. We read this book during Sukkot precisely because our sukkahs remind us of the fragility and the vulnerability of life. We leave the security and comfort of our houses, go outside, and live in a shack exposed to the wind, the cold, and the rain. We call the week of Sukkot Zman Simchatenu, our season of joy. Why? Because in that place with the leaves changing and the stars overhead, we are very aware that we are alive. Rabbi Sachs concludes that is what it is to be a Jew, to experience joy in the vulnerability of life. So here we are about to start 5786. It's true that our world is complicated and messy. It is also true that in the midst of everything, joy exists. In this new year, let joy surprise you and share it with others. Be present, pay attention. You just might hear the giggle of a baby or see an owl in a tree. As you watch the pelicans fly in a long, low line over our glorious bay, it is possible you will be grateful to be alive. Rabbi Sachs wrote, "It takes religious courage to feel joy. A people that can know insecurity and still feel joy is one that can never be defeated, for its spirit can never be broken, nor its hope destroyed." We are a people of religious courage with a powerful will to know joy, even in times of trouble. It is our inheritance. We have learned to lift up joy even in times of sadness. Joy prevents despair from taking hold. Did you know that in the Talmud, the rabbis explain that if a funeral procession and a wedding procession meet at an intersection, the funeral procession must yield to the wedding procession? Even a funeral lets joy go first. The possibility of joy always leads the way in Judaism. In the days and months since October 7th, the Jewish people has been living in the midst of the words of Torah. We have been surrounded by blessing and curse, life and death. Not a moment has gone by when we've forgotten our hostages or felt entirely safe or not worried about the war or anti-Semitism. But in the midst of deep anguish, there has also been joy. A few weeks ago, my friend Karina went to Israel to visit her new grandchild. She wrote an email from Israel. "I want to tell you about the different layers of simultaneous vulnerability that I have experienced in this universe of a family being built while a war happens," she wrote. "In this experience, pure love and deep desperation do not take turns, they coexist. They are woven together. To hold my newborn granddaughter is to feel a joy so profound it aches, because it is intertwined with the fear for the world she has entered." As 5786 begins, we are deeply aware of the challenges of these times. Despair and joy exist all around us in the same world at the same time. "I have set before you blessing and curse, life and death. Choose life." The verse doesn't end there, though. It continues. Choose life so that you and the generations to come will live. It is our task to choose life and to look toward the future and to experience the joy that sneaks up on us. Perhaps the Jewish version of Jefferson's declaration would be life, liberty, and the pursuit of accepting joy. In this new year, may we find moments of joy to light the darkness. May we welcome them and delight in them. And may we be inscribed for life and all its complexities in the book of life. Shana Tova.